The state of Israel is in a crisis of security trust. The problem is not with our enemies. We've always had as many enemies as we have today. The situation is not any more dangerous than it was several months ago, when the Prime Minister took steps to topple his government for political reasons. The situation is the same. Even then, it wasn't right to make politics out of security. Something bad is happening to us from the inside.
And that is some more of Education Minister Naftali Bennett's speech this morning, where he was expected by many to resign, break apart the government coalition, send the nation towards elections. He did not do that. He criticized heavily the Prime Minister, but said for the good of the nation, he's putting his politics aside and staying in the coalition. With me now to talk about that, the implications long-term for Israel, I have with me Uri Zaki. Uri is a prominent left-wing activist, the former director of B'Tselem USA. Also with me, Jeremy Saltan, the Anglo Forum chairman with the Jewish Home Party, the party of Education Minister Naftali Bennett. Jeremy, let me start with you. Bennett is saying now the Prime Minister will act right-wing. Now he's going to start adhering to right-wing policies and actions he did not do before. Why does he have that faith all of a sudden in the Prime Minister to do that?
Well, Jeff, you, myself, Uri, the entire nation listened to the Prime Minister last night give his speech. And I think we all can agree that we heard a different Prime Minister. The Prime Minister that I heard last night was actually starting to act as a defense minister. And he talked about going ahead and attaining a goal. And he started to talk a lot tougher than we've heard in recent times. So Minister Bennett said, listen, I wanted to be defense minister, and by the way, he still wants to be defense minister, but the reason to be defense minister is not so he gets a really nice cabinet position, but it's so that Israel wins again.
That's summation of the term of events. What's wrong with that, Ori?
The only thing that happened this morning is that Bennett chickened out. Netanyahu, who's a shrewd politician, outmaneuvered him. He knew that that's going to be Bennett's play. He made this, speech to the nation last night, talking only about security, making it almost impossible for Bennett, who wanted to resign, who wanted to prove that, he's, he criticized Netanyahu this morning. This 9 minutes talk, that changed the whole thing. No, Netanyahu proved that his experience in politics is, better than Bennett's one, and Bennett today lost lots of credit.
From what you want to see happen, is it better or worse that Bennett stays in government, that he keeps the right-wing coalition going, or would it be better for your long-term hope when it comes to the Palestinian issue, the West Bank issue, that they go to elections now, have the Zionist Union perhaps have a fight?
First of all, it's not about the Palestinians, it's about Israelis. The mere fact that such a person that this morning said that the military JAG is more dangerous than the leader of Hamas is someone that I can't trust our children to be under his responsibility. I think that Netanyahu himself is a lousy prime minister who brings Israel to a really dangerous track. So as an Israeli, from my point of view, a Zionist point of view, an educational point of view, and of course security and political point of view, I think this whole government is really bad. I do think that the fact that Bennett stayed is bad for Israel, if only because he's the Minister of Education.
Jeremy?
Well, if Meretz is unhappy with Minister Bennett staying in the government, then I guess we're doing a good job. What we saw here was a minister who said, I am going to provide a contrast between the outgoing defense minister, Avigdor Lieberman, who decided to run away and acted irresponsibly, and Naftali Bennett, who is acting as the responsible adult in the room.
Why is this not a case of him backing down? He stood up, had a clear and bold demand, I will get the defense portfolio or I'm going to leave the coalition, and he blinked. Why is that not an accurate portrayal of events?
Because, again, it's about direction. It's not about the person who is sitting in the seat of defense minister. It's about making sure that the Bayit Yehudi feels that the actual policy of the defense ministry and the defense minister who is at its head is something that meets our policy goals. And, again, that's for Israel to win again. And that's what we heard from the Prime Minister last night, and that's what Bennett said today. We're going to hold him accountable for that.
On that phrase, winning, which we heard from Bennett, what does that mean to you, winning? How does Israel win here?
I actually don't know. I think that the current track is a no-win track. I do think that if I compare Netanyahu's attitude towards the conflict with the Hamas is much more, I don't know, responsible. If you think about it, because he understands another round with Hamas, another round of violence will only create suffering on both sides of the fence.
On that level, you applaud for this, and
yes,
applauding the prime minister. He took clear political risk in the ceasefire.
Yeah, I applaud him in real time when he stopped the fire. I do think though that his current track is a no-way track, because as long as he is a captive of Hamas because of his unwillingness to negotiate with Abu Mazen and to remake Gaza and the West Bank one entity and create a Palestinian state next to Israel that would ensure Israel as a Jewish democratic state, as long as he doesn't do that, he risks the fate of Israel.
Jeremy, I understand what you're saying about direction, and if you believe this, certainly what Bennett did is commendable. It's not about my personal politics. It's not about my ego. For the good of the nation, I can help have my hand on the steering wheel, even if I'm not in the seat. But in that speech, he criticized heavily the prime minister, his indecisive and weak on security. He turned his back on Israel's south. How could you have those kinds of remarks and say, I'm still going to be in this government?
So that's the second part to your previous question. We are not happy with the direction that the defense ministry has had until now. We've heavily criticized Avigdor, 48 hours Lieberman, and the entire policy that he supposedly was trying to enact. And our feeling was, when Netanyahu said he was going to maintain the defense portfolio, that we were going to see a lot of what Bennett outlined today. He said, I saw a different prime minister last night who acted as a defense minister, and because of that, I'm willing to go ahead and give him a chance.
Because of one meeting?
He gave a pretty good speech.
Oh, come on. But we all know that the policy in Gaza was determined by Netanyahu, not by Lieberman. And I guess that's good. I mean, if in comparison, there's not going to be any change with the policy vis-a-vis Gaza, because it's part of a bigger strategy by Netanyahu, and I think we all know that. The only thing that happened here that Bennett and Shaked, and perhaps Bennett himself, more so than Shaked, brought himself to a lose-lose situation. He chose not to go against his base and not to topple a right-wing government. I guess that's the best he could do. But in doing so, he proved that he's not somebody that you can't take his threats seriously.
Jeremy, can I get you to respond to one thing Ori said earlier? And this, more than anything else, perhaps, really, in Bennett's remarks, is getting a lot of international flack. He said that IDF soldiers are now more concerned about repercussions or punishment from the IDF military prosecutor than they are about Hamas attacks, than they are afraid of Yahya Sinwar attacks. Can't possibly be true. IDF combat soldiers on patrol are not more worried about the IDF prosecutor than they are about death and violence from Hamas, are they?
You know, I'm glad you're bringing that up. One of the reasons a lot of people are afraid to see Naftali Bennett as defense minister is because he speaks to soldiers of all the ranks. And we know that the way the system is right now, there is a system in which at a certain point stuff gets filtered out. And a lot of times it hurts some of the people in the security establishment when they hear things that Naftali Bennett is bringing from the lower ranks. Naftali Bennett, just as he has done in the education ministry, as he did before that in the economy ministry, he speaks to everybody at every level, and what he's saying is stuff that he's heard.
Yeah.
This is a reckless person. I mean, to say that the leader of the Hamas, a terrorist organization, is less scary to soldiers than General Sharon Afek, who's he's representing the IDF, the Israeli military. When Elor Azaria, for our viewers who remember a few months ago, when Elor Azaria basically took the law to his own hands and shot point blank a handcuffed terrorist, it was Bennett who protected this unlawfulness, and it was Afek who prosecuted Elor Azaria and truly done so with the backing of the Chief of Staff, General Eisenkot.
Yeah.
I think this is a person who can never be the Minister of Defense when he throws under the bus, the wheels of the bus, a general in the Israeli military.
I want to bring in this conversation our correspondent, Jordana Miller, tracking every angle of the story. She's in the Knesset, in the halls of Parliament right now. On this point, that argument that was made in Bennett's speech about soldiers now being so afraid of the IDF military prosecutor. We're hearing reaction now from other lawmakers, even now minutes ago from the Prime Minister. That seemed to really strike a nerve.
Absolutely, Jeff. I mean, there has been a feeling here that it was an outrageous remark to make, that Israeli soldiers are somehow more concerned about coming under prosecution than the actual enemy that it faces, both in the south and in the north. So I assume that he's going to get even more and more flack for this. You know, Bennett, for many people, Bennett last night seemed to just, this morning, I should say, buckled under that pressure. We should remind everyone that if Bennett thought that it was going to work in his political favor to leave this government, he would have done it. Instead, he decided that he didn't want to be blamed for bringing down the most right-wing government in Israel's history, and that is why he is staying in the government today.
Jordana, many are saying this is a masterstroke from the Prime Minister, that he really knew exactly what to say and when to say it down to the minute in order to touch the Israeli electorate. I mean, do you understand that point of view? If so, how did Netanyahu pull it off in 72 hours?
Listen, Netanyahu is a political mastermind. He always has been. He has faced so many political challenges through his career. And certainly this time he realized that all he had to do was really call Naftali Bennett's bluff and to tell the voters and other leaders that they would pay a price if Naftali Bennett brought down this government, that no matter what, Netanyahu knew that he is the leading candidate to win in the next election, but he might not be able to put together a right-wing government the way that he has today. Again, this is the most right-wing government in Israel's history, and the Prime Minister, Netanyahu, has a real agenda when it comes to Iran, when it comes to the peace talks and his close ties with the United States, and he didn't want to give that up. And certainly he was about to blame Bennett for that, should this government have come crashing down.
Given those circumstances, how was it being viewed from other Likud lawmakers, from other Jewish home lawmakers, how Bennett did? He acknowledged he was overmatched in this political fight. He tried to reframe it as something for Israel's security and national interest, that he needs to at least stay part of the coalition.
Well, Beit HaYehudi lawmakers are reframing this, saying that they are acting like the responsible adults in the room, and that is the reason that they have not left this government, because they feel that they can now have some kind of influence over the direction that Netanyahu will have when it comes to security matters, now that he has the defense minister portfolio. So that's the argument they're making. Right. Whether it's convincing or not, we'll have to let voters and the public decide.
Yeah, a lot of political drama still at play here. Thank you so much for your analysis, Jordana Miller. I want to thank our guests again, Jeremy Saltan and Zaki. Great to have you both in our studio talking about these issues. Never a dull day when it comes to Israeli politics, especially the last 48 hours or